I'll be back. Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're having a good one today. I'm Nick, and today marks the start of the Terminator review series. Yes, one of my favorite franchises. Definitely has its ups and downs though, but I'm really excited to get through this franchise. We'll be doing this once a week and then eventually coming out with a ranking to wrap things up. And I am not alone on this journey, guys. Go check out Jason from the J-Man's Movie Cave and Matt from Fachi Cinema. They will both be putting out reviews the same time as me every week. I will put links to their channels in the description, guys. Go check them out. And without wasting any more time, let's get into it. So The Terminator was released in 1984. It stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, Michael Biehn, and was directed by James Cameron. Now, first off, I'll give you my backstory with this film. I honestly do not remember watching the first film or the second film in this franchise. It's just like I've always known it my whole life. Like, I don't remember the first time watch. These have been on play in my house for as long as I can remember. And the funny thing is, I never actually remember owning part 1 and 2, like on VHS back in the day. But they were always at our house, whether I was borrowing them from a friend or going to the library and renting them, which I did all the time. Every time I was at the library, I was picking up T1 or T2 every time, no doubt about it. And these films are just so iconic to me because, like I said, I grew up with them and I've known them as long as I can remember. So they hold a real special place in my heart. So the basic plot to this one, guys, is about a cybernetic killing machine is sent back from the past from the year 2029 to 1984 to murder the mother of John Connor, who will eventually grow up to be humanity's savior. The humans also send a soldier of their own to the past to try to protect that same woman. Now, this is a very ambitious plot for a relatively low budget film, but I think it works because they set it in 1984 and not the future throughout the entire film. We do get glimpses of the future and it does look great, but I think if they would have relied on that for the entire film, it just wouldn't have worked as well. Like, this is a crazy enough story just on paper, and to take it from paper and to put it on the screen is really impressive. Gotta give James Cameron props for that. He didn't just direct it, he also wrote this film. And he had a result to a lot of guerrilla filmmaking where they didn't exactly have permits to film a lot of these scenes in the city. So they went out at night and filmed it and wrapped up right away and tried to get out of there before, they called the cops or whatever on them. So there's even a few extras in the film that aren't actually actors. They're just people walking down the street that happen to be in this film. And James Cameron actually came up with the idea after being really sick and having a high fever. He ended up going to bed, and I guess he had this nightmare. And it was basically that the machines took over in the future, right? And Judgment Day and all that happened. And when he woke up, I guess he immediately started sketching out different things and writing things down. And it's just genius storytelling. Like, going to the past to save the future, like, it's just so unique. And not a lot of these films were made back then. There wasn't very many time travel movies like today. This was before Back to the Future and everything. So this is really influential in the genre. And me personally, time travel movies are my fave. Like, you look at my top 10 movies of all time, at least 4 of them are time travel films. My favorite of all time being The Butterfly Effect. And you'll soon find out that this one is very high on that list as well. And I don't know, there's just something about time loops or time distortion, anything to do with time, and I'm hooked. And really, the way this film's set up, it's basically a forever loop until the sequels come along, of course, and change everything. But with just this film, you're basically stuck in this forever loop, and it really makes you think. Something like the question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And you get some of those questions in this film, and it's really interesting. I like that it makes you think. And the way the story's delivered, it's done in like bits and pieces. We get the basic plot right away where they just say the machines are out to destroy the humans, so they sent this machine back to the past to try to stop the future. We only get that, but we don't know much about like our main lead, like Kyle Reese, this human soldier they send back, and we're basically in the same shoes as Sarah Connor, because she's confused and scared and all that, and we're kind of in the same boat as her. And when she's asking questions and such, we're really listening because we have those same questions. And even though the storyline is given to you in these bits and pieces, it's never confusing. It's all done in a very cohesive manner, and it's basically told through Kyle Reese's dialogue. That's how we find out what's going on, and it's just done brilliantly in my mind. And the scary thing is that Skynet doesn't look like it's so far-fetched nowadays. Like, we basically use computers to run everything in our lives, so really at any moment they could turn on us and try to wipe out the whole human race. So it's not so far-fetched of an idea. And our villain in this, the T-800, is on a mission, and he won't stop until his mission is complete. And it gives you this sense of urgency because you can't stay in one place too long. The T-800 doesn't stop. It will just keep coming and coming. And I feel like that sense of urgency really helps with the pacing, where it never drags at all. The only time it ever stops to take a breather is when they're developing their characters or their plot. Other than that, it's pretty much action all the way through. And this is the type of film that I would say is a genre bender. There's really not one genre you can really give this film. It's a good mixture of action, thriller, suspense, horror. Yes, I said horror, and this is the only film in the franchise with those elements. And sci-fi. And it really blends all those genres seamlessly. That makes this one epic product in the end. James Cameron himself calls this a tech noir film, which is funny because that's the name of the club in the film. He states it's a futuristic sci-fi thriller with the grittiness of the old noir films, and that's why he claims it's a tech noir film. But basically, it's a very dark thriller if you had to just put one name on it. But like I said, there's just as much action and sci-fi as there is thrills and horror. It's a good combination. And you can even go all the way out on a limb and call it a slasher, if you like to call it a slasher, because technically it's this guy going around murdering everyone until he gets to the final girl, which is basically like a Friday the 13th film or a Halloween film. You know, it's the same concept. Now let's get into the characters, guys, and I'm going to start with Sarah Connor. What a great character. She is played by the beautiful young Linda Hamilton. But she get a great arc in this film. She starts off as this naive, scared, confused girl with not really a future ahead of her. She's just a waitress. And then she turns into this badass heroine by the final act. I mean, the woman was essentially just put in the middle of this war without knowing anything that's going on at the time, you know? And so no wonder she's scared. She doesn't trust anybody. Like I said earlier, she's basically the viewer's perspective, because we're just as confused as her at the beginning when all this shit's happening and she's like, who are you? And to Kyle Reese, and what is going on? So yeah, she's basically us, the viewer. And we also get Kyle Reese, played by Michael Biehn. Kyle's set up in a very mysterious way, kind of like the plot, where we're not sure where he's coming from or what his motivations are besides protecting Sarah. And he's basically a nobody until we figured out that he has this real connection with Sarah. And his whole dialogue scene in the car chase where he's explaining to Sarah what's going on is one of my favorite dialogue pieces in the entire film. It's great. And Kyle really is a badass soldier. I mean, this man traveled throughout time because he loves Sarah that much. There's more to it than just the war in the future. It gets pretty emotional. He is really attached to her, even though he'd never met her before. He just heard stories and had her picture before. But that was enough to send him to the past and risk his life with a one-way ticket. He knew he wasn't going to make it back. And yeah, it just really works. To me, it's just one of the best romances ever put to film. I'm not a big romantic type of guy, but this one is definitely in my top 3 romances in cinema ever. And you gotta just love the whole photo aspect of Sarah, where he's in the future looking at it and thinking what was Sarah thinking of when she took this photo. And we learn to find out she was thinking about him. And it just makes this whole little like not the time loop, but it makes just the whole movie loop even better. Now let's talk about our villain, the Terminator, the T-800, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, the man is not the best actor on like a professional level. He was always more used because of his size, because he was a bodybuilder, real intimidating, you know. But I think this role really works for him because he plays like the robotic movements perfectly. His dialogue delivery, like the way he looks around the room and scans the area, is done. It's just done brilliantly, in my opinion. And it's just such a unique villain, you know, that is a cyborg on a mission that will not stop. It doesn't have to sleep or eat. It's just going to keep going at you, you know? An unstoppable force, really. And his looks really cool, too, how he can blend in with the human race by having real flesh and blood over top, but underneath being an endoskeleton, a machine, solid metal, right? I just think that it's such a badass look and very intimidating. And all the rest of our side characters do a great job as well. Whether we're talking about the roommate, Sarah's roommate, and her boyfriend, they remind me of these like quirky 80s slasher characters, you know, throwaway characters, but they're fun in this. And all the detectives, cops, and of course the psychiatrist who returns in part two all do a great job. I just love how they don't realize who they're messing with, right? When they got Kyle there in interrogation. Since we talked about the characters, let's talk about the acting real quick. I think basically everyone in this film did an amazing performance. They were all solid, especially our leads. And this film really made a name for Linda Hamilton, Michael Biehn, and Arnold. Like, all three of them became so huge and successful after this film. Now, the only kind of nitpick or negative thing I could give to this film, even though I wouldn't say it's negative, I give more mixed, is the effects. There's a few times, especially when Arnold's like fixing his eye in the bathroom by the sink, where you can tell that it's just a prop, right? It's not really Arnold's head that they're messing with, right? But to be fair, when I seen this growing up, I've never noticed that once in my life. I've never said, "Hey, that's terrible effects." Or even at the end when his flesh melts off and he's basically like stop motion coming at them. Yeah, maybe it didn't age well, but to me, I kind of let it go past me. It doesn't bother me one bit because I've seen this movie so many times in the past and I've just never picked that up, especially back when this was on VHS and that nobody was talking about the effects. But nowadays, when we have, you know, more knowledge on practical effects and everything, and how they moved into CGI nowadays, I think this movie starts to show a little bit of its faults with its effects, but to me, it doesn't hurt the movie one bit. It's not going to knock it down its score at all. And the stunts are great as well, whether we're talking about the stunt doubles themselves or when they're doing like the car chase scenes and everything. Everything looks really cool and the action is top notch. And the musical score to this film is pretty neat as well. It has like an industrial vibe to it, which really adds to the whole machines, you know, taking over. We get a few scenes with like almost like a drum playing, which reminds me of like the battlefield. And just everything they use in the score, I think, adds to the plot. It goes with it. You know what I mean? They pair side by side. There's even a few times where they use like their keyboard or synthesizer to make like these more digital sounds. And to me, I'm like, okay, now that's like the robots, you know? And yeah, the score is great. And here's a few iconic scenes I just had to talk about. One being when the T-800 first arrives in 1984 with the electricity and that going off, and we get a naked Arnold. And just the way, as soon as he arrives, he's scanning the area and that. It's just so cool and badass. No matter how many times they try replicating that scene. One of the coolest scenes in the entire film is the Nightclub Attack, when the T-800 finally finds the real Sarah Connor and goes to kill her, and they end up with a big battle with Kyle. And yeah, it's just a great little shootout in that club. Another great shootout is the police station shootout with the "I'll be back" scene. And then he comes in and he comes back all right, and he basically kills every cop in that station. And the lighting, everything in that scene is great. And the last scene I want to talk about is the whole final act. From the chase scene all the way to the fire explosions to the factory itself. It just brings back so many memories watching this again. And when you get the T-800 on its last coming towards Sarah, like dragging itself towards her. You're like, this thing will just not stop. And this was just very impressive for James Cameron. Like I said, this was basically his first original film. He only did Piranha 2 besides this, which I haven't seen, so I can't comment on that, but I'm sure it's worse than this. And yeah, for the man writing and directing and everything on this fairly lower budget, he just nailed it. And he makes me proud that he's a Canadian. So guys, if I'm gonna have to rate this film, oh, it's easy to me. I have to give it a 10 out of 10. This is a masterpiece if there ever was one. This is the first 10 out of 10 I ever gave on the channel too, which is pretty exciting. And it may not be the last. This is not only a great 80s film, but it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's in my top 3, guys, so there you have it. So that's my little review on The Terminator from 1984. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to tune in next week when I cover T2, which should be really interesting. I know that's a fan favorite in this franchise. And just a reminder to go check out Matt and Jason's channel. Both of their channel links will be in the description, guys. Make sure to show them some love and support. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching.